It was a cold autumn evening when my friends and I decided to take a road trip to a small secluded town in the mountains for a weekend getaway. We were looking forward to escaping the noise of the city and enjoying some time in nature. The drive was beautiful at first, with the crisp air and colourful leaves lining the winding roads, but things took a strange turn as we approached the outskirts of the town. As the sun began to set, we noticed the fog rolling in. At first it was just a light mist, nothing out of the ordinary. But as we drove deeper into the mountains, the fog grew denser and thicker, and soon we could barely see a few feet ahead of us. The headlights from the car didn't seem to make much of a difference, cutting through the fog like a knife, but revealing very little. It was getting late, and we were all a bit on edge. The eerie fog made it difficult to see the road ahead, and the thick trees on either side of us seemed to loom like dark shadows. We all stayed quiet, the only sound being the hum of the tires against the pavement. Suddenly, out of the mist ahead of us, a car appeared. It was traveling in the opposite direction, and we all breathed a sigh of relief, happy to see another person on the road. But as the car passed us, we couldn't help but notice something odd. The driver was staring at us through his rearview mirror. His face was pale, almost ghostly, and his eyes seemed to lock with mine for a split second, sending a chill down my spine. We shrugged it off, thinking it was just our imagination, but the feeling of unease lingered. We continued driving through the thick fog, the strange encounter still on our minds. About 10 minutes later, we saw something that made our blood run cold. The same car that had passed us earlier appeared again, this time in front of us, driving at a slow and steady pace. We weren't sure how it had gotten ahead of us, considering there weren't any turn-offs or side roads, but the car was there, drifting through the mist. The driver's face was still visible, his eyes locked on us once again. There was no sign of any other vehicle behind us, no sound, nothing but the eerie fog and the unsettling gaze of the driver. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. We decided to pull over, thinking that maybe we had just encountered some kind of prank or weird coincidence. As we slowed down and stopped on the side of the road, we watched as the car continued on, slowly disappearing into the fog. But before it disappeared completely, it did something even stranger. It suddenly vanished, like it had driven off a cliff or into some unseen part of the road. It was gone. We were all left in stunned silence, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My friend, who had been driving, decided to turn the car around to see if we could find any trace of the car, but as we retraced our route, there was nothing, no car, no tire marks, just thick fog and an empty road. We searched for what felt like hours, but it was as if the car had never existed at all. We finally gave up and made our way to the town, our nerves still on edge. When we reached the local diner, we decided to ask the waitress about the strange car. She gave us a confused look and told us there were no other cars on that road for miles, especially not at that time of night. She went on to say that there had been rumors of strange occurrences in the fog over the years, drivers getting lost, cars vanishing, and people seeing things that weren't there. It was then that we realized something terrifying. We had just encountered one of those strange occurrences. The fog seemed to have its own way of playing tricks on people, and it had done just that to us. The car we saw, it may have been a ghost, a figment of our collective fear, or perhaps something even darker. We never spoke of it again after that night, but every time I drive through fog now, I think back to that strange encounter and the pale, haunting face of the driver staring at me from behind the wheel. The fog holds secrets, and it has a way of hiding things we may never fully understand. Even now, years later, I still can't explain what happened that night. All I know is that the fog wasn't just a natural phenomenon, it was a barrier between two worlds, and we had crossed into something we weren't supposed to, something we